Hi, I'm Drew.
And I'm Sam.
And welcome to Drewling Samantics.
Hello, are you there, mate?
Hello, mate. I am here.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. After me, it's ages since I've seen you in the flesh, isn't it? And I have pretty much fully recovered.
Bless you. Thanks so much for that, mate. Yes, it's been over a week since we were together in person. I mean, obviously we had a record shortly after that, but yes, just over a week since they actually allowed us out in public. Two people, well, three of us because we were doing a show. But yes, we were within touching distance, and indeed there were instances where I had to, well, whack you around the head.
Please be careful how you phrase this.
Yeah, yes, where I had to touch you.
Yeah, that's what I was frightened of. Stop it.
No, we were, in case we didn't mention it, I'm sure we did mention it last week, but we did a Fawlty Towers show together, which went rather well, I must say.
It was great. I would make the obvious comment, though, that I probably melted off a couple of pounds during the evening, as did you.
Yeah,
it was warm. It was
a little bit warm, but no, we survived it. Not the least surviving being in each other's company in reality, which is always enjoyable. It's always
great fun.
Do you know what, mate? It's interesting because obviously when we're doing the Fawlty Towers shows, yes, there are 3 or 4 people involved depending on what sort of things you're doing, but actually, I would say Fawlty Towers is probably remembered as a duo more than anything else, as Basil and Manuel. Like, Sybil plays obviously an enormous part, but if you were to do some sort of survey, I imagine that the first 2 people that would be mentioned by most people, if you ask them about Fawlty Towers, would be Basil and Manuel. And the reason I say that is because I don't know if you saw, we had a lovely message. And there have been comments previously on the same thing, but it was about how we complement each other. And I'm not talking about when we do shows, although obviously that works really well anyway, but talking about the show, the podcast, and it was just something along the lines of our voices are different enough but not sort of weirdly different, so we sound good but our it's very intelligible who's who and what's going on, and just our mannerisms, the way we talk, the way we connect, the way we sort of what's the phrase where you sort of like bounce off one another?
Yeah.
They just said we were an excellent pairing, an excellent duo, which is
well, that's. I mean, the thing is, this came. The whole podcast, as everyone knows, pretty much the history now. But it's because we actually, I think, we work well together, and we were thrown into that situation. When we were doing the dinner events. But I mean, we are friends, and I think that helps. And we know, we kind of hear each other's timing, and from a technical point of view. But actually, we just get off. We get on and we bounce off each other, and and the other nice thing is we don't, probably because of the age difference and the generation, but we don't agree on the same things all the time. Which is helpful because then, because if we both sat there going, yeah, you're right, don't make for much of a discussion, does it? Do you know what I mean?
No, I mean, when it comes to, in essence, we're quite similar people, similar-ish sort of upbringing, albeit, as you say, that there's sort of a generation between us, if you like. You're actually the same age as my mum, which you...
There you go.
But so there is genuinely a whole generational gap.
Yeah.
But despite that, and despite certain differences which are unavoidable because of that sort of age difference, we have quite similar sort of thoughts and kind of feelings about a lot of things. But equally, as you say, there are a couple of things where we do differ a bit. And that is unavoidable because of age. It's unavoidable because of locality, I think, as well. But as you say, having those differences of opinion, or having those alternate views, does make for better discussion, better debate. Disagreement's important. Like if, as you say, if everything was the same, then it'd just be like
Be very bland, wouldn't it? It'd be very boring. It's
it would. Yes.
yeah.
But and funnily enough, it was something hearing that sort of cemented what we're talking about today, because it was something we've talked about for a little while about bringing up, and it was just perfect timing that this message came in, because duos and pairings is something that is quite important, quite prevalent in our industry, more so in certain areas than others, and we thought it might be nice to sort of go into that, because you mentioned we started the podcast because we worked really well together, and it was something that sort of naturally occurred from there, and because of that, potentially then you look forward and go, right, well, if something came up asking for a duo, I've got someone I can sort of go to for that. And I think that sort of philosophy, that kind of, right, there's a connection there already, let's use that again, has been kind of a thing in film and TV for quite some time. Probably more on the sort of writing, producing side, because once people make a decent team or a decent pairing there, they sort of go, well, let's do that again.
Let's do that, yeah.
But it does happen across the board in lots of different ways. And I know you've done a bit of sort of research and looking into, and you've got some sort of people. What sort of stuff came up, or what were the things that jumped out at you?
Well, I sat here thinking, if I think of a duo, who comes to mind, in any sphere? And I just sort of started plucking them out of the air, and then went, okay, so I started off. I've got a couple of friends at the moment are doing a show about famous comedians, and I thought, okay, comedians, probably Morecambe and Wise, Laurel and Hardy, and then if you think about the team, there's been lots of British comedy duos. I mean, you think of Morecambe and Wise, the two Ronnies, not Abbott and Costello, I got them written down, Cannon and Ball, Mike and Bernie Winters. Nowadays, maybe not comedian-wise, but probably the most prevalent now, are Ant and Dec. I wouldn't say they were comedians, but they are a presenting double that, not everyone's cup of tea, but God, they're very good at what they do. They're brilliant. They can make shit shine, as a friend of mine said. There's been loads of these comedy duos.
It's funny that you literally just you saying that, then more have jumped into my mind. So Fry and Laurie, French and Saunders, Mitchell and Webb. These kind of they're comedians in their own right, and they're actors in their own right, but you put them together and it sort of almost elevates them that bit further.
But if you think of Morecambe and Wise and those Laurel and Hardy, Abbott, they were together for 40 or 50 years, their whole life, their whole, pretty much like Ant and Dec. Their whole, you couldn't have Ant walk on a show or Dec walk on a show and present it on that. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
When Eric Morecambe passed away, Ernie Wise was an extraordinarily talented man, but there's a gap. And the other thing about it is the weird thing. They are always on the same side of each other. If you look at Ant and Dec, they are never. Morecambe and Wise didn't. They worked around each other, but Ant and Dec always. I thought, what is it like? Always looking over that shoulder, or whatever shoulder it is.
Even saying it, you wouldn't say, "Oh, it's Dec and Ant." It doesn't feel right. Doesn't sound right.
No.
And I've been semi-conscious of that, and this is not necessarily important, but it's maybe slightly interesting when doing any of the social media and stuff for the podcast. So I don't make sure it's always you one side, me the other when for some of the imagery, but it always is the same for post-production on video for YouTube.
Yeah.
It's always the same for thumbnails. It's always the same. Or I think mostly has been the same for guest episode things where the guest is always in the middle and we're either side. So so there is that sort of slight and Drew and Sam Sam and Drew doesn't necessarily feel the same.
Sometimes it's the alphabetical thing, isn't it? M and Morecambe and Wise, M and W, Abbott and Costello, and Drew. There's a kind of. But then again, there are nice things where a name sounds different and they balance. It's.
I can't think of one that isn't alphabetical order now. Having gone through that, all
Laurel and Hardy.
oh yeah, okay. Well, fuck you
Only
too, mate. That's
well, no, because I just thought about that then. So that's how it came to me. But
I wonder why. I wonder, but all the others, Mitchell and Webb, French and
yeah,
Saunders, Morecambe and Wise,
Fry and Laurie.
Yeah. Well,
Is it an alphabetical thing? That's an interesting. If anybody knows the answer to that, let us know, or what you think it is.
and this is a complete side sort of step now, but there is a thing. I need to find it, but there's something in the English language where we somehow have automatically ordered the way words work. I might try and look it up as we're chatting in a minute.
Oh,
But it's something along the lines of you wouldn't say you would say it's a big shiny silver car. You wouldn't say it's a big silver big. You wouldn't say it's a shiny silver big car. It means exactly the same
exactly the same thing.
but there is an order to saying things.
It's interesting because just to follow from that, because learning lines, as I've done for the weekly rep, and I look at it and go, when you've got a line wrong because of that kind of grammatical rule. You go, I know I've learnt that line wrong because it should be not it should be a terribly big problem. That's not a line, but not a big terribly. It doesn't work. It's interesting. I mean, the other thing, I mean, I was thinking about this and duos. It's interesting. There are lots of creative duos in the theatre. I mean, if you think of people, and a lot of musical ones. I suppose
musical duo.
Yeah, English ones. I mean, the first one that came to me was Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. Probably one of the most successful English, musical writers. You'll correct me because you know this much better than me, but and then I was thinking, well, there are, we were talking about a little while ago about people who became synonymous with what they created. I mean, the guys that wrote Les Mis, I don't know if they were a permanent writing partnership, but their partnership certainly became famous because they wrote one of the 20th century's greatest musicals. It's like, was it Boublil and Schoenberg? They become massive. Have they written any more? I don't know because I don't know that much about it.
But they have, it hasn't had the same sort of impact, if you like.
It would be difficult to top Les Mis, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, so and then obviously to push music even further, you've got all sorts of performing music duos over the years, who have formed, I guess, deliberately rather than something sort of organically happening. A lot of duos out there. I mean, you've got the sort of the relationship ones as well, like Sonny and Cher, for example.
Yeah.
But a lot of duos perhaps that put together sort of stayed together. Now, the sort of interesting to go away from music a little bit. I'm sure you'll take it back to, because I know you've got a lot of sort of things you've researched and got noted. But the thing that particularly stood out for me, and I'm going to precursor this with a question: how many directors or production teams have you worked with that have asked you back? But I know you don't know an exact thing, but sort of, and I'm leaning more towards film and TV.
It hasn't happened so much in film and TV. I haven't gone on to do set, but it's happened a lot in theatre. I get asked back by directors and production companies because most of my work is there. Yeah. I'd like to think that directors would ask me back, and I know directors that produce work and that would say, "I'd love to work with you again. I'd like to work with you again. I like the way you work," and that. But I haven't got a regular, film producer or film director. Although I was asked back when I did Seeking Persephone, and the year before that I did, Love Through Time, and the guy said, I wanted an Englishman in the, you've got to be him,
Yeah.
So that's, and I know they're making some more, and he said, you'll be in those. So that's probably,
Yeah.
and that was that he was the director of production on one, and then he was director and DOP on the next. So it was because of the way I worked with him on camera that he liked, and also the character actor thing. But that's mine. What about you? I mean, I know you've done a couple, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done a few bits where they've sort of gone, right, we know immediately you're coming back. I guess you also could look at it, things like pantomime, being asked back to do shows again. But that's maybe not quite sort of the area we're looking at. Although East Grinstead's panto that I did a couple of years running always have the brilliant Kevin Gauntlet and Callum Donnelly, who are a fabulous duo. They're not necessarily marketed as a duo, but as a pantomime duo, they work really well.
Sometimes with panto, it doesn't matter what production companies do it. That team, actor, dame, comedian, whoever they are, the audience like them. The theatre keep them because they go, our audience love this guy. It actually wouldn't matter which, because I've known dames and comedians stay at theatres for donkey's years, and the production company go, well, there's your dame. What? Our audience love him, her. You can't take them out. You go, all right, and they take it on board.
Which is why, as I say, that's a slightly different scenario. But I was leaning more towards film and TV because, and I'm going to give a fairly substantial example. If you look at, and his name's completely gone from my mind now. That's really bloody useless. Johnny Depp and fill in the gap.
Tim Burton.
There we go. Thank you. It almost was not a running joke, but it was always almost an assumption that if Tim Burton released a new film, then one of his leads would be Johnny Depp. Simply because they obviously had this incredible working relationship. I mean, you could also say the same for Tim Burton and Helena Bonham Carter, who happened to be married as well. So that's another thing. But I guess there are a few examples in film and TV where the production, the director, and the leading man, lady have this relationship where they sort of rely on one another, or not rely on, but can rely on one another. And
it's like, I suppose you could say about Scorsese and De Niro.
Yes,
they've done loads of movies, and I suppose because Scorsese does that type of movie, and probably they're gangster, if you like, and De Niro eats those parts up, like. But yeah, those two are. I was trying to think if there's any more.
Maybe you could probably say he's got a couple, but Guy Ritchie quite often uses someone like Vinnie Jones, or Jason Statham. But as you say, and maybe this is why I'm going sort of the wrong way about looking at it. Maybe it is the type of films they do. This film this script gets given to them. They go, yeah, I already know who'd be perfect for the lead in that. I think just with Tim Burton and Johnny Depp, it was a bit more regular. Maybe I
honestly think that they get each other. I think sometimes actors and directors, there's a shorthand. They know each other not only because they know the type of work they're doing, but they just get on, And I mean, I was just thinking as well of actors that have recent. I mean, the one that came to mind was Brad Pitt and George Clooney with the Ocean's movies. Two wonderfully good-looking guys, two wonderfully talented guys. They make an incredibly charismatic pairing, but you wouldn't have immediately thought that was going to work. But you get the right vehicle for them to maybe take them out of that film. They might not work so well, because they haven't worked on anything else.
Not as big. I'm sure there are a couple of examples that they have done. I am going to look. We are doing live looking up here. Just to
do some live looking up.
There we go. 2024 Wolves. Clooney and Pitt.
Wolves, of course. Yeah.
Iconic. Ocean's 11, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, Burn After Reading. So they have done a few others, but yes, the Ocean's films obviously are the ones that primarily spring to mind, and maybe that's what sort of started it all. So I think Ocean's 11, the first one was 2001, and yes, and then
Yeah,
Confessions of a Dangerous Mind was the year after. Then they did two more Ocean's films, Burn After Reading 2008. So it was quite quick
quite quick.
turnaround.
Yeah.
And then 2024, the most recent one, where they sort of reignited that connection, if you like.
But I mean, if you look at that if you were wanting to make a movie, I mean, we know how this, but most people know how this stuff, you've got to get a name. If you can get two huge names like that would have amazing screen presence, very much like the original Ocean's movies did, that kind of cool, that kind of, you've sold your movie already. Yeah, it's going to cost you millions because those guys don't work cheap.
Well, yeah.
But that's going to be, that's going to appeal. It's a boys' movie. It's a girls' movie. It appeals right across the board. I mean, they're just brilliant films.
Yes, yeah.
But I mean, there is no doubt about it that, when those two guys, and it's interesting as well, watching the movie, they spend an awful lot of time not together in the film. It's very noticeable that they're not always in partnership in the film. Do you know what I mean? Sparking off each other. Yeah, there's a lot of that. But actually, they separate for a lot of the time during the movie. And it's when they get back together, you think, oh, that's interesting. They've not written them together, bouncing off each other. Where if you look at the old partnerships in movies, they were always permanently together.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess
I mean,
so.
one of my favourite movies from that, and it's not that they were a film, but they, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, probably one of the greatest westerns ever written, probably one of the greatest films, but they are pretty much permanently on screen all the time. There's a couple of scenes where they're not, but very rarely are they out of a scene, and it's interesting. You go, it's just the way the films are constructed and how they sort of like, how did that work then? It's
Yeah. Do you think, because then you could grow it beyond duos? Obviously, you got the sort of like the Monty Python boys as an example, where they were different. Like each time it was maybe a slightly different partnership or a different three because they could alternate between. But then you do have standouts within those groups of people. But I think, okay, no, I'm not going to vote. I'm going to ask you, why do you think sometimes a duo is so successful? What do you think of the key? Like, why do we work so well? Like, we've talked about that, but and then looking at some of these on-screen partners, or perhaps writing partners, or yeah, what do you think is the secret, if you like?
I think I think that you have to, whoever it is, they have to complement each other. They have to be so different, that so right for it together, that if you take one away, it doesn't work. You obviously it's a duo. You can't have Morecambe without Wise.
No.
That makes sense. But I think in comedy, for me, a comedy duo works because there is ostensibly a straight man, a feed, and the gangster. I mean, if you look at Morecambe and Wise, you look at Morecambe was obviously Ernie Wise was probably the best straight feed there ever was. I've never seen anyone better in any partnership. But if you look at look at Fry and Laurie, or Armstrong and Alistair Armstrong and Mitchell and Webb, I hate Mitchell and Webb. I think they don't work. They don't work because they don't complement each other. That they are so the same, and they have so many of the same problems, that for me, Peep Show just was bleh, because it didn't work.
Because I think I prefer them individually, but I can see why people like them as a pairing.
For me, they never worked. They were irritating as a pairing because they didn't complement each other. It was a battle. They never came out. There was always that. You sat there and you looked at. For me, you were looking at them and they're thinking they're fighting each other. They're not complimenting each other. That's what the show was about. However, it made them so unappealing and so unsympathetic. I couldn't watch them. And they ended up being a couple of smart asses. When they're on their own, they're quite. I mean, Webb, I'm not so fond of. I don't think he's very strong, but purely in my opinion, but they were very successful at Peep Show. Maybe that very antithesis that that I couldn't feel. I maybe that was their strength. Maybe I just didn't get the gag, and sometimes obviously. But it's interesting
to appeal to you. So people could be advertised as like the funniest couple ever. And if you don't like one of them or both of them or don't like that style, then obviously you're not going to see that.
Yeah. But I mean, for a certain, demographic and a certain, sense of humor, it worked. They were very good. I can't fault what they did. I didn't like it, but I also, for me, there was a reason they didn't have that gelling quality. But but for me, then they weren't really a partnership. They were just two people in a show. They've never gone on to do anything else particularly. They've never done anything else. They've never been Mitchell and Webb. Do you know what I mean? For me, it was just that show. Same as Armstrong and Miller. They were put there. Armstrong and Miller was a great hook to put them together for that one show. They're never particularly, they're not lifelong partners. But if you look at people that, the two Ronnies, there was two guys who could. Their strength, they could both feed and be funny. They were extraordinary in that respect.
Very different styles as well.
Completely different styles. Yeah. I mean, like if you look at Ronnie Barker,
in your face versus very subtle and
and it's and they came from different worlds. They came from Ronnie Barker was the TV character actor. Ronnie Corbett, this wonderful stand up, was a great actor, but this world of stand up and put them together. I mean, Corbett was a supreme entertainer on his own. I mean, I remember going to see Ronnie Corbett in summer shows, and 2 hours of the man, and he was hysterical. And you think, really?
And there is an interesting point, and it sort of proves something we were saying earlier on. I never found him entertaining without Ronnie Barker with him.
Interesting.
He seemed false and just. He struck me as everything I ever saw him do. There was canned laughter, and it felt to me like if there hadn't been, there wouldn't have been any real laughter. And that shows exactly the sort of differences that make us work.
Yeah,
that we have these different things. Put them together, the two Ronnie, and we both adore them. Separate them off. You're quite happy with either. For me, I would only really want to see anything with Barker involved.
Yeah,
but that personal preference is absolutely entitled to. And you make a good point with Armstrong and Miller. They did this incredible duo, and the sketch comedy together was great. And then used that to catapult off into very separate, very similar careers, actually presenting. And again, very different styles. And again,
isn't that because that's interesting you say? Because I was going to say, sometimes performers gravitate towards each other, but it's interesting how often they are put together. I think comedians and those kind of duos, they have to get up. You couldn't put two comedians together like, right, you're going to be a duo unless they gelled, unless they go, no, we're not, because we ain't going to work, But interesting how those they I think I don't know the story of say someone like Cannon and Ball, but they weren't a partnership. They just gravitated towards each other. They found each other, and it's well, then if you look at I was thinking of musical ones. Okay, you got a lyricist and a musician. One writes the music, one writes the lyrics. Rodgers and Hammerstein, and then Rodgers and Hart. The Elton John and Bernie Taupin and people like that. I mean, they wrote completely, in different continents.
Yeah.
Send me a tune and I'll write some lyrics. Send me some lyrics and I'll write a tune. It's interesting how they were put. How they work together. It's just I find it fascinating. I mean, one of my favourite ones is I mean, I was looking at musicians, Burt Bacharach and Hal David. I mean, again, musicians. It's but and then there were there's the ones who were put together by studios. Was Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin.
Really?
They were put together by the studio. I mean, they did sort of shows on the Strip and everything because they were all doing, But suddenly, Dean Martin, you think Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, you couldn't think of two people more polar opposite. exactly why they worked. You've got this amazing clown in Jerry Lewis, and one of the smoothest, coolest crooners that ever walked the earth in Dean Martin, and they just, and they worked in, and they just kept coming back together, and they were put together because they oh, we must make a movie together because so they sort of went to studios, and the studio went no, never, so and it was the other one I was looking at, Hope and Crosby. Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. They did the road movies together, and you think that was a studio putting two, one of the best singers in the world, one of the most popular singers in the world, and one of the most popular comedians at the time. Wonder what would happen if we put them in a movie, and bung them in a movie.
What about this? So I've got a couple of examples that have sprung to mind that I think are polar opposites in that one pairing are very similar, and maybe that's why they work. And one pairing who, albeit in real life, may not have been like it, but the way they portrayed themselves were is very, very different. So, and they're, again, two very different disciplines. So, Michael Ball and Alfie Boe, who have toured together, performed together, but are both individual musical theatre legends, leading men. Like, both incredible singers, both incredible solo singing careers, both incredible musical theatre careers, have worked on stage together in musical theatre, but also then have a show together and albums together. So two very similar, but put them together and then you notice the differences.
Yeah.
The antithesis to that, and again, completely different genre, Penn and Teller. Magicians, both incredibly talented. One massive, brash, loud, in-your-face American, really kind of lots of energy. The other one, quiet, understated, until very recently didn't
never
even speak.
Yeah.
Up until the last few years, or appearing in TV shows, no one had heard his voice. Well, obviously people had, but that was part of the act. But again, worked so brilliantly because they were absolutely opposites of one another. So there is no rule to how a couple should work to be a successful duo. But
it's the magic, isn't it? It's that whatever is the it thing that suddenly it works and people go, we love this, and then of course people go, how long and it just lasts. It just lasts and lasts. Sometimes I think these things get together, and it may be a short term thing, or but then it just becomes. I mean, if you think of Ant and Dec. Coming out of Biker Grove, and then they did the music together, and now they've just had this wonderful career. Because for me, they're just two likable blokes, who happen to be.
Well, that's certainly what they portray, isn't it? That they are just a couple of lads.
They're a couple of likable guys. They have that undefinable common touch. They work well with people. They work, and it's what's made them what they won the television awards 20 odd years running. And you think, well, yeah, because there's no one better at what they're doing. It's interesting at how. I mean, I that's it. They're television presenters. They work as a duo, I think they really are probably the best at what they do. But they don't act. They don't have a. I mean, they have a variety show, but they're presenting stuff. It's interesting that they've made a massive career out of being.
I wonder if either of them could have had a successful solo career, and I don't mean that negatively, but I think you cannot imagine one of them on their own. So
that's very true. I wonder if they. I wonder if they had ambitions to do something, and they were so successful together.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of thing.
Exactly that. But
interesting.
An interesting conversation. We've sort of gone around the houses and come out with nothing in particular of sort of substance to say this is why this works. But I think what we've done is shown that you can't predict it. But when chemistry happens, and that's the nature of life in general, isn't it? Just wanted to finish. I managed to find that thing I was talking about. I know it's not connected to anything.
Oh no, it is.
But the adjective stack, I think it's referred to, is where there is an unwritten rule to the order that you use adjectives in the sequence that they are used in. And it's here is the sentence for you. So, it is my favourite big old square blue Italian wool doormat. Okay. Big old square. Big old square. Yeah, it's a big old square something. You wouldn't have an old square big something.
No.
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 A blue Italian wool. Yeah, something that's blue, it's Italian, and it's made of wool. You wouldn't have a wool blue Italian something.
No.
Isn't it mad? So a big old square blue Italian wool doormat would not be a wool Italian blue square old big doormat. Exactly the same words, mean exactly the same thing. Just there is an unwritten, and there is no written rule for it. But unofficially, or the way that our brains work, is we would always go opinion. So you might say it's lovely, it's bad, it's awful, it's beautiful. You would say the size of it, big, small, massive. The age of it, it's antique, it's new. The shape, it's round, it's flat, it's whatever. The colour, the origin, so a country or a city or something. The material, and then its purpose. So in this sentence that I just used, it is my favourite size, big, age, old, shape, square, colour, blue, origin, Italian, material, wool, what's it used for? Door, mat.
That's really interesting. I like that. I like that.
And as said, it's absolutely not necessarily relevant to what we've been talking about, but in the world of performance, actually, it probably is, because as you said, when you say a line slightly wrong, or if a line is written slightly wrong, if someone is trying to put something together, it can feel alien, it can jolt, it can feel unnatural. So maybe there's a little secret there to people that are learning lines or people that are trying to write scripts. Use this unofficial rule not because it is a rule, but because our brains are likely to go
in one direction. Yeah, they align it like that.
There we go, a little bit of advice that probably has no use to anyone. And I'm going to shut up now because I think we've probably said enough.
I think you've said enough, mate. Yeah.
Should we bring in someone to make a lot more sense and talk about more important and interesting things next week, mate?
I think we should, mate. I really think we should. Let's unveil the trio next week.
Okay, then, my lovely little old short, wearing a blue polo shirt, English human friend. I think that's in the right order. I don't know.
I'm not even going to question it because I was hanging on every word there.
Until next time, thank you, as always, everyone, for joining us. Write in, message us, do whatever. Let us know about some duos that we may have missed or something that we may have got wrong if you think we've got it wrong. And equally, find an example to our order of adjectives, the adjective stack.
Yes.
I say
adjective stack. Loving it.
So, other than that, come back next week. There'll be a lovely guest who's far more entertaining and makes a lot more sense than either of us ever do. So, from a duo to a trio, we'll see you next time. Take it easy.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks again for watching this episode of Drewling Samantics.
Please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video.
Don't forget, we're also available as audio only. Just search Drewling Samantics in any good podcast app. And please support us on social media. All our links and handles are on screen now.
We love welcoming new followers and subscribers, so why not share with your family and friends so they can join in too? Thanks very much. See you next time.